Representative Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the permission of the Majority Leader and the Minority Leader, I have two House resolutions today that I'm going to be submitting. The first House resolution, both of these resolutions are honoring two extremely important women that have been very important to the medical marijuana program in the state of Rhode Island. The first resolution is honoring Rhonda O'Donnell on being the first medical marijuana patient in the state of Rhode Island. And the second resolution is honoring Ellen Lenox Smith for her compassion, courage, and advocacy and leadership. Let me submit these. I'd like them to be read. Thank you.
Send them up, please.
So, Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to recognize, first of all, on the first resolution, someone who was a pioneer in our state's medical marijuana program. Rhonda O'Donnell. She was the first licensed patient in our state back in 2006. She served as a leading voice in the passage of our medical marijuana law, working very closely with my late father, who thought the world of her. Rhonda is a selfless and compassionate advocate for patients throughout the country, and I am pleased to honor her with the citation. My colleagues from Warwick may remember Rhonda and for her advocacy as a multiple sclerosis patient. She was married to the late Jack O'Donnell, who worked for many years in the Warwick DPW. Rhonda is a great mother, grandmother, nurse, and inspiration to many of us here and work as a patient advocate. Rhonda recently moved to a nursing facility in Coventry because of her health and her ongoing battle with MS. I understand she and her son, Tom Angel, may be watching us today on the internet. So I wanted to thank Rhonda for being the first official medical marijuana patient in our state and for her lifelong good work. And now, moving on to the second resolution, Ellen Lenox Smith, who is here with us today, she's in the corner, and Ellen is here from North Situate with her husband, Stuart Smith, and her devoted service dog, Maggie. Also with her today is her friend Joanne Lepperton from the Rhode Island Patient Advocacy Coalition. I can't say enough about Ellen. She's a wonderful person. She was a teacher for 29 years. She's fought many years debilitating disease, and one of the only things that she found that was able to give her comfort was medical marijuana. And back in 2009, when I was coming up here, my father was being honored for a housing award, and I was coming up here for that ceremony. And that was when I first met Ellen, and it was in the sub-basement. And when I was coming up for the award ceremony, Ellen was down there, and we got to talking, and she found out who my father was, and it brought her to tears, and she said how much the medical marijuana program had saved her life and had given her a quality of life back. So, I'd like Ellen and her husband to stand, and we could give them a round of applause. And I want to thank her for all her. And Maggie also. So if we could read the resolutions, that would be great. Thank you. And thank you, Ellen, for all you've done for the program and for so many in Rhode Island. Thank you.
Representative Slater moves House Resolution honoring Rhonda O'Donnell on being the first medical marijuana patient in the state of Rhode Island. That is seconded by Representative Diaz, Whip Edwards. All in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Clerk, please read and leave on the desk for signatures. And Representative Slater moves House Resolution honoring Ellen Lenox Smith for her compassion, courage, advocacy, and leadership. That is seconded by Whip Edwards, Representative Diaz, Representative Chippendale, and Representative Bennett, Representative Marcello. Representative Agello. All in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Clerk, please read and leave on the desk for signatures.
House Resolution honoring Rhonda O'Donnell on being the first medical marijuana patient in the state of Rhode Island. Whereas Rhonda O'Donnell, a longtime resident of Warwick who currently resides in Coventry, is recognized as a champion of medical marijuana patients both in Rhode Island and nationally for her stalwart, compassionate advocacy for those seeking relief from debilitating medical conditions. And whereas, despite being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at a young age, Mrs. O'Donnell has led a vibrant and productive life as a registered nurse, a patient advocate, wife of the late Jack O'Donnell of Warwick, and mother of 2 children. And whereas Mrs. O'Donnell is most widely recognized for her public advocacy for passage of Rhode Island's medical marijuana law in 2006, testifying over multiple years in favor of legislation, recruiting patients to join the legislative push, and serving as a role model for those who are too fearful to stand up in public for the right to use medical marijuana. And whereas during Mrs. O'Donnell's push for Rhode Island's medical marijuana law, she revealed deeply personal information about her family's efforts to assist her own father in finding relief from the effects of chemotherapy through medical marijuana long before there was any protection under state law. And whereas Mrs. O'Donnell accompanied the late state representative Thomas C. Slater in hand-delivering her application to the Department of Health as the first licensed medical marijuana patient in Rhode Island in 2006, an event that gave hope and comfort to those facing similar health challenges. And whereas Mrs. O'Donnell's advocacy on behalf of Rhode Islanders also included raising funds for the MS Society of Rhode Island through MS Walks with her team, Rhonda's Roadrunners. And whereas Mrs. O'Donnell was recognized as the Marijuana Policy Project's National Activist of the Year. And whereas one of Mrs. O'Donnell's lasting legacies is the inspiration she provided her son Tom to go on nationally recognized advocate, to go on to be a nationally recognized advocate, helping people in states throughout the country advance medical marijuana legislation. And whereas Mrs. O'Donnell has long remained a true advocate that has never sought public acclaim or recognition for her work, but rather is content in the knowledge that her magnanimous efforts have led to the improvement in the quality of life for countless Rhode Islanders. Now, therefore, be it resolved, this House of Representatives of the State of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations hereby recognizes and honors Rhonda O'Donnell on being the very first medical marijuana patient in the state, and a woman who remains a true role model and inspiration for those dealing with pain and suffering. And be it further resolved, the Secretary of State being hereby is authorized and directed to transmit a duly certified copy of this resolution to Mrs. Rhonda O'Donnell. House Resolution honoring Ellen Lenox Smith for her compassion, courage, advocacy, and leadership. Whereas Ellen Lenox Smith is an accomplished public school teacher of 28 years, a small farmer, and was a competitive swimmer and coach who was diagnosed with 2 debilitating, incurable medical conditions in 2004. And whereas Ellen's medical conditions produced extreme disabling and unrelenting pain and prevented her body from metabolizing conventional pain medications. And whereas Ellen's physician recommended medical marijuana as a last resort to ease her suffering, and Ellen overcame her skepticism to learn about this treatment. And whereas medical marijuana successfully alleviated much of Ellen's suffering and improved her quality of life. Whereas Ellen reached out to physicians and other Rhode Island patients to support and educate them regarding the legally effective use of medical marijuana. And whereas Ellen and her husband Stuart became caregivers for 10 patients suffering from debilitating medical conditions. And whereas Ellen works tirelessly to raise awareness about her rare medical condition, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, in both the medical and patient community, so that both others will receive earlier diagnosis and treatment. And whereas Ellen generously donates her time and skills as an advocate and board member of the Rhode Island Patient Advocacy Coalition, RIPAC, is an ambassador for the Rhode Island Arthritis Foundation and for the U.S. Pain Foundation, and is a writer and an educator for the Rhode Island Ehlers-Danlos Support Group. And whereas Ellen has worked on both federal and state level to raise awareness about the challenges of our citizens whose lives are compromised by chronic pain. And whereas in spite of her often fragile health and complications, Ellen has generously utilized her own challenges to inform, inspire, and care for others. Now therefore be it resolved, this House of Representatives of the State of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations hereby recognizes and honors Ellen Lenox Smith for her compassion, courage, advocacy, and leadership. And be it further resolved, the Secretary of State be and hereby is authorized and directed to transmit a duly certified copy of this resolution to Ellen Lenox Smith.